So morning guys. I titled this workshop The Inner Child, and I have a very, very loose structure for it. I haven't planned out anything too specific. I just wanted to talk about my experience with the inner child, how I understand it, as it's been something that I've been working on a lot in the last year, and I'm sure many of you know of the inner child and what that work relates to. And it's been very interesting for me in the past year, and I was combining a lot of different techniques for the inner child work, and it's very fascinating because the inner child is really a concept that we have, but that concept is a portal into our suppressed and repressed material. And what I noticed can happen is you can make the inner child very concrete as a separate reality, as a separate entity. And that can be very functional because it allows you to have some relationship with the inner child. And that's a good step in the work. But also what that does do is it creates a divide between you and the inner child, and you can process emotions as a witness to your inner child, if that makes sense. So if you visit your inner child and you ask them how they are doing, what they are feeling, they may tell you some response, but you will still feel separate from that emotion. And the point in any practice is to heal our own system, and for me it was valuable to recognize that, first of all, the inner child is a construct. So from there, I'm coming from non-dual kind of teachings, where we're seeing that even our own self is a construct in our own mind. The body and the mind are just constructs. Okay, so the inner child is also a construct. So we have to recognize we're just working with energy, and we have to be able to own the emotions we're working with, and not kind of hold this inner child as something other than ourself, because ultimately it's a practice or a portal into our real self, our suppressed self. And so the pain and the hurt that we're trying to access when we do inner child work is there from, some would argue, before we're even in this life, before we're even in the womb, because our karma carries on from a previous life, if you believe that, and it changes the mind stream of our experience. Whatever we're still hung up on at death in this life, it comes into the mind. I really want pancakes, and then that proliferates into a whole desire system that determines where that consciousness seeks to give birth to a new life, where it can work through how it's really still addicted to the maple syrup it uses on pancakes, right? Silly example, but it kind of does work like that. And once that soul, if you want to call it that, has chosen this life, it then is undergoing its curriculum, if you will. It's undergoing the narrative and the story of its lessons that it wishes to undergo in this life. And it starts to develop in the womb of the mother. And already before the child is born, it picks up on the whole biology of the mother, as I'm sure you know. So everything that's going on in the mother is also going on in the child. So whatever the mother puts into herself, the child also receives that. And that's not only physical, like food or drink, that's energetically. So whatever the mother is putting into herself energetically, this child also receives. And the child cannot understand language yet. And this is quite important for me, because when we heal, we can do a lot of studying and exploring, but ultimately the root of our suffering and the way we relate to the world comes from our nervous system. And so the child is already being conditioned, even before the child is born, to be aligned with the mother's nervous system and the father's nervous system. It can hear the arguments and the conflicts and the anxieties of the family before it's even born. And so at a pre-verbal level, the inner child already, the child already knows what its environment is like. Is it hostile? Is it friendly? And therefore it already has some defenses, some openness to different types of experiences. And this is before we've even got to hold our child, to speak to it, to take care of it. And so we're recognizing that we cannot raise a perfect child, because ultimately trauma is what actually gives birth to the personality. Ultimately, the personality is like a coping mechanism for trauma. If we resolved our trauma, we wouldn't have a personality as such. We would still have character and express ourselves, but we wouldn't feel ourselves to have personality. We would just be natural flowing expression. And so at that stage, a child doesn't have a personality, but they have the roots and the seeds of what will form their personality, because they have all these impressions from their environment. But remember that on one level, they have chosen this. They have chosen that life. So we don't take any responsibility and say, oh, you know, this is my fault, in the same way that your life and your karma is not your fault. It is ultimately God's will, what happens moment to moment. And we are just the witness, or just the expression of God's will. And so fundamentally, it is okay that we are flawed. It is okay that we don't feel whole at times. It is okay that we feel broken at times, because that's what is the indicating mark of being human. And so the child is still in this womb, and it is already hurt. It doesn't even need to come into the life before it is hurt. And this doesn't mean, oh, poor child, it's so hurt, although that can be part of it. It is just the way that in this realm, this is how the life form comes into existence. That in maybe other planes of existence, there is not such a process where they have to go through this process and the personality becomes very rigid. I would say in other planes of reality, even not in other planes of reality, but if you look at the animal kingdom, they would still have this physical impression. The lion gets angry, the cub inside learns this anger. So when we say, how do animals come out knowing what to do? It's because they are, they're in a relationship with the mother or the birth giver before they're even born. So they learn all these things. But what the animal doesn't learn is language in the same way that we do, which is what differentiates us. Our ability as a human is so spectacular, mainly because of our ability to communicate. And just to remind you that, the words that I speak, the words that you hear and receive, are just vibrations, but you can make some coherent meaning out of them because we've conditioned each other to respond to that. And that opens up a whole imaginary universe that we're experiencing right now. And ultimately, the baby in the womb hasn't discovered that universe yet, So it still experiences reality, but not through any filter of language. And you'll notice that it's very hard to listen to me and to not attribute meaning and projection to the words that I say. It's almost impossible because language is such an inherent part of our experience. But the baby has not yet experienced that. They are just in raw openness with reality. And so the mother will give birth, and that is traumatizing for the child because there's this massive amount of pressure put on them. Maybe the birth goes wrong. There is flashing lights in front of them depending on their birth. So there's this overwhelming amount of stimulus that comes into them, and the only way that they can deal with that is to try and shut down, or to scream and cry and kick. And so already, just before the mother's held the baby, it's gone through a lot of things. It's had 9 months of development of nervous system conditioning, and it's come into this world of flashing lights and really overwhelmed. And what it's going to be doing is it's going to be saying, biologically, I just need to survive because I'm scared, I'm hurt, I don't know where I am, I just need to survive. And typically this person starts to look after me. I know that if I suck on the teat, I feel good, I feel like I'm well, I'm rested. I know that if I fall asleep, this person is there when I wake up and they take care of me. This is all still pre-verbal though. And as these years go on, there is so many relationships and ways of experiencing that arise, that lead us ultimately to the state where we're in, where we now can't imagine really the baby's state, but we can access it through meditation, through dropping our attachment to language and conceptualizing and categorizing reality. And it's a journey that we all go on, and we learn fundamentally how to be who we are through also the type of person that our mother or father or caregiver is. Because when an animal, which is what we are still animal, but we also have a higher than animal possibility. But when they are threatened or in danger, they have 3 responses mainly. They can either fight, they can flee, or they can freeze. Now, a baby, if it's in an environment or a young child that is damaging or difficult, it can't fight because it's not strong enough. It knows that if it fights, it will not win. It can't flee because if it flees, then it wouldn't be able to take care of itself. So the only option a lot of the time is to freeze. And so a stressful environmental trigger occurs. There's someone shouting, there is someone being neglectful, whatever it is, and the body freezes. And what happens in that moment is there is a vortex of energy that's circulating in the body that has nowhere to go. And so it finds a place to store itself in the body. And that is what people call trauma. If in any traumatizing event, and it doesn't have to be that, we were really heavily abused or anything like this. Trauma can be, my mum didn't buy the lollipop from the shop when I wanted it, and that really hurt my feelings and made me feel unloved, because trauma is how we relate to what happens to us. It's not what happens to us. Some people undergo very, very arduous realities and difficult experiences and actually come away with very little trauma, because in that moment they were able to deal with it in a way that was appropriate for the response. They actually managed to fight or flee instead of freeze, because when you freeze, the energy has nowhere to go, and the body says, I must do something with this energy, I can't just have this in here, it's too much. And so often that energy is stored in the body, condensed into the body. And in modern society, we get older and we become more and more disconnected from our body. We become caught on fixations and addictions and all the things that distract us. And we're not sensitive enough in the body to feel what it needs. So we're always numbing, distracting, dissociating, rather than feeling and healing. So really a lot of inner child work, if you want to call it that, comes down to cultivating sensitivity, because you can't heal something if you can't feel it, and you can't feel it if you don't have a great enough sensitivity in the body. If the body's very dead and it doesn't have sensitivity, then there's no way to feel emotions, because emotions are energy moving through the body. So we have to be sensitive. So things like Vipassana meditation, where you're purposefully cultivating sensate awareness of each part of the body. Can I feel sensations on my forehead, on my nose, on my lips, on my right big toe, on my right left, toe, hand, shoulder, elbow? Can you feel sensations there if you direct your attention there? Because that is directly indicative of how much can you go into yourself. So fundamentally, we have to be open, we have to be sensitive, and we have to be willing to be truthful to ourselves. If we're not truthful to ourselves, then the inner child, if we want to call it that, doesn't feel safe to express itself. But remember that the inner child is not a separate reality. Often in inner child work, we use that construct because it helps us as a portal in. It's like, oh, I now have my inner child and I can visualize my inner child. And it's really good. That's great because it's a lovely thing. You bring to mind an image of yourself as a young child and it's lovely. But it still retains this divide. And so what happened for me was I hit a block with the inner child work. I had anchored my inner child into a ring that I was wearing, which is like an NLP technique. Anything that is easily accessible to you, you can anchor an experience into it. So if you have a ring or you put two fingers together in a certain mudra and you practice it over time, bringing something into your conscious awareness, you create a strong mind-body connection with that. So I put my inner child into a ring, and whenever I would touch it, I could just connect with it. So if I was upset, I was angry, I could connect with my inner child, visualize it. I gave it a home in my old garden where I used to live, and he would be climbing the tree and I'd go find him, and it was this whole story and this whole narrative which was somewhat romanticized, right? It's this idea of, oh yes, I go and see my inner child, and it's lovely and it's very sweet. But what happened for me was, as I've said, it was this feeling of, well, if I'm relating to this, then I'm still not allowing myself to feel something, because what I'm looking at is what's in me. I have to feel it as myself, not as some kind of compassion for some other. And so I started looking into a lot of emotional repression work, and I was asking these teachers about inner child work, and this is what they said to me. They said that it's very good work, but ultimately it retains this divide, and it doesn't get to the root because you're still functioning in a dualistic manner, and it has to be in your own system with yourself. And so they have a technique that I've started to learn called emotional repression reverse inquiry, and we can try some if we like at some point. But essentially what it consists of is, it's very simple. So you state to yourself a statement, and it will sound like a positive, not a positive affirmation, it will sound like an affirmation of sorts when we try to tell ourselves things. And the funny thing with those is that positive affirmations also, you can't trick your internal belief system. Fundamentally, you can change your state for temporarily. I feel great, I feel alive, I feel yeah, and then your natural functioning state will return. So the only way to change your baseline is to access your beliefs, your fundamental ways of perception. So there is a danger there with positive affirmations of actually making yourself feel worse, because you say, I feel peaceful, I feel whole, and internally you know that you don't feel peaceful and whole, and you're creating a deception in your own system. So what this suggestion is not an affirmation, it's a prompt. So you might say, for example, you might go into meditation, bring up a subtle image of your mum or dad, or who you feel as though you had the most conflict with or received the least love from as a child. And then when you're in the space, you will say just something like, I don't feel anger. So it's a reverse inquiry. So I don't feel anger. And you're not trying to convince yourself that you don't feel anger. What you're doing is you're poking your system. You're saying, I don't feel anger, and what comes up? I say that now, and my body feels more alert, because my body's now, my body can't lie because it's in the presence of a statement, and it actually allows these suppressed or repressed material to come up. You're poking it and you're saying, I don't feel sad about how my dad treated me. I don't feel hurt, or I was able to always express myself. So, and you're not trying to convince yourself of that. You're putting it into your system, and you're curious about what arises. And you're working with the body, because, yet again, we have to have sensitivity in the body to heal, because the traumas are stored in the body. And so we use these two together. So it's a somatic meditation, also with some kind of prompt that we're given. And I've done that multiple times, and it's a very new thing for me to explore. So I don't claim to be kind of an authority in this. There's people that really teach this properly, and you know, they're very skilled at what they do. But I'm just wanting to share it for your own curiosity. So yeah, you're somatic, you're in the body. Usually your breath is with the belly as it's, you know, expanding and contracting. And then you're giving yourself these prompts. And I've literally, just doing that, had purges where I'm like dry heaving on the floor because my body is releasing like trauma. And it's like, it feels like, you know, you're in a vastly altered state of consciousness, because your body is, because you're essentially revisiting the original wound that you had, and you're resolving the way that you dealt with that wound. So you're reprogramming your nervous system so that it doesn't respond in that same way. So there is a lot of pain involved, as I'm sure you all know, on the spiritual journey. There is a lot of pain, but we face that pain because we have a love for truth or wholeness or unity. And yeah, that is the joy of the path, really. It's to come back to ourself, because when we look at a little baby or a little child, they're full of freedom, and they're full of love, and they're full of natural expression. And ultimately that's what we all want. But we think it is a state of complexity and something that is very difficult to achieve, rather than something that is very ordinary and very innate in us. And that's what it is, because whenever you're in a state of laughter or joy, you're not thinking about, how do I be in a state of laughter, or how do I be in a state of joy? You're just there, you know. And the baby, when the baby cries, it is sad, but it's not hung up on being sad. It cries, and it stops crying, and then it's laughing and playing. If you look at animals, you see they will play fight, and they'll play around with each other, and then they'll lie in the sun and have a nap. Whereas if human adults try to do that, we get 2 years later, we say, oh, I still can't believe that guy hit me around the face, you know, it's so rude of him. And, you know, so children and animals don't do that. So it's something that's inborn with our ability to think, which gives birth to the past and the future. And we can think of all these past that did or did not happen, and these futures that may or may not happen. And so obviously, fundamentally, it is also about presence. We have to be present with our emotions right now, be open to past experiences arising in order to change our future. Because if we don't do that, we don't access the present, we don't change our future, because we continue to run the same programs. So the future's not fixed in that way, because however we carry ourselves right now determines what will happen. If I choose to go over there and stop doing this workshop, that leaves you all feeling quite abruptly ended. Maybe you all can get some food and your whole day has gone a different direction. Who knows? That's free will and all this stuff, which is another interesting conversation. But what I'd like to invite us to do is to just have a go at some reverse inquiry and see how it could be considered a different approach to what we typically call inner child work. And I think for a lot of people, inner child work is a nice title that gets them into that, because it's soft, it's caring, it's sweet, it's delicate, but inner child work is brutal and, soul crushing, and, it's a rebirth. But, if you advertise that on a tin, it's not too appealing. So, we've got to put something a little bit more colourful on there. So, yeah, if you get comfortable, and you can be lying down or seated. And we're just going to do a few minutes of meditation. Very ordinary meditation, nothing special. Just watching the breath at the belly. So you don't need to practice any special technique or go too deep into your meditation here. Feel into any tension in the body and just work to relax it and soften it. Just letting whatever comes up, arise, whatever wants to leave, can go. Not attached to what occurs, what arises, in a state of fundamental acceptance with reality. And now just notice that there is a quality of your experience that is always here throughout every sound, throughout every sensation, throughout every thought. And that thing that is always here doesn't have a shape or a colour or a size, but it is definitely here. And feel into your experience directly that your existence is here. You don't need to prove it with your mind. Don't need to go and search for any validity. Just your being here. The fact that you hear these words is completely enough. And just stay with that. Let that be enough. Breath just flowing naturally. Just bring your awareness to the top of the head, and we'll all have varying degrees of sensitivity, but just work on feeling the sensations on the top of the head. Moving down into your forehead. your temples. And if you can't feel anything, don't get hung up on it, just place your attention there, remain there, see what happens. In your cheeks, your chin, your mouth, your nose, and your eyes. Going down the back of the neck, feeling the clothes on your body, the weight of your bum on the ground. Feel the earth supporting you. Feeling your shoulders, your upper arms, your lower arms, and your hands, and your fingertips. Usually can feel a lot of prana in your fingertips, bubbling energy. And your chest. A lot of people feel movements around the chest, subtle energy flows. That's perfectly fine. Just feel it, let it be there. And if not, that's okay too. Going down into the belly. And your pelvis, your genitals, your bum on the floor, your upper legs, your lower legs, your feet, and your toes. Now your body is more awake than it was before. It's more sensitive, more aware. Just stay in this place of openness, feeling the subtle energy around the body. If you feel it in particular places, you can sit with it. And when you're ready, in your own time, I want you to bring to your mind the parent that you got the least love from as a child. And now most of us are either anger repressors or sadness and hurt repressors, and we can be both. We can have both in different situations for both parents. So I will now give you some prompts. Remember, they are not affirmations. They are there to poke your system and to see what happens. Continue to be in the body. Allow energy to work through you. You're in a safe space. So, feeling what it's like to be in your body in the presence of this parent or this caregiver. And now just in your own mind, say, you don't make me feel angry. Or, you don't make me feel sad. You are safe. You don't make me feel angry, or you don't make me feel sad. Not trying to convince yourself that that is true. Using it to see how your system responds, to find what is repressed or suppressed in you. I feel safe to express myself fully around you. I feel safe to express myself fully around you. I know I am loved no matter how I present myself. And whatever arises, let it come through, because the mind will revert to its natural state to try and keep it in. Know that this is a safe space. Another one could be, I am loved just as I am by you. Feeling into the body. If you're not in the body, the emotions won't be able to come up. Some other good ones are, for those spiritually inclined, I don't need to heal anymore. I don't need to heal anymore. See what how your system responds to that. It will bring up that in you which still wants to be healed. I don't feel suffering. And whatever comes up, let it come up in the body. And see how this is not you and an inner child. This is just you. It is your emotions, your feelings, your truth. And know now that you can feel those emotions, because you are not at the danger you was back then. You are safe to release that in you. Let it express itself in whichever way it feels appropriate. And if you're not feeling anything, use the prompt, I don't feel anything. You can prompt your system in any way using a reverse statement. I don't feel hurt. I don't feel rage. And eventually, your mind will block out the emotions. And that's fine, because you can only stay in a sensitive emotional space for so long, and the mind will protect you. That's okay. That's your defenses coming back. It's healthy. We can't be too vulnerable all at once. So if your mind does close down at any point, that's completely fine. It's what it should do to try and protect you, because it's opening up to raw energy in the body. And just like that, you can have a sense of this emotional repression work, the reverse inquiry prompts and how they work. And just very slowly in your own time, you might want to wiggle your toes or your hands. Just become slowly more aware of the ordinary world. Maybe rolling your neck or doing a stretch. And then just placing one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. And just thank yourself, not your inner child, yourself, for being here today, for showing up for yourself, for being open, for being vulnerable, for working on yourself. And then send out gratitude to everyone in the group. Thank them for holding the space that they have today, for doing their work. Because it's when we all grow together that we are stronger. And just carry this message in your heart for the rest of the day. You may feel very sensitive at times today if stuff's come up for you. That's okay. If you need time by yourself, for yourself, then do that. Because if you activate certain energies in the body, it can make certain memories come, certain feelings we've denied. Just know that that's all okay, and just to hold it gently and lightly. And if you ever want to go back, then you can do this reverse inquiry and see what comes up in your system when you say certain statements. Feel into them, flow with them, let them reveal a story to you that you've repressed in yourself. And once that story is felt fully, it will no longer be a program that you're running in the background of your subconscious. You will identify it and throw it out and no longer have to live according to that belief. Because all they are is beliefs. They are fundamentally the biggest belief we have that stops us is we believe we are unlovable. And we design our whole life as a means to prove that we are lovable. And that goes so deep, and we can't access the depth of that wound just by visiting our pain once. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the process is to revisit our pain over and over again and bring the light to it such that it doesn't weigh us down and make us unable to live a life of fulfillment. So I really hope that you all enjoyed this space today. And when you're ready, if you haven't, just opening your eyes. And I wish you all a lovely day, and thanks for coming, and just take care of yourself and be gentle. And if there's any questions or things that people want to put into the space, how you felt, what you didn't feel, if something surprised you, if you've done it before, anything is welcome. And also you don't have to put anything into the space if you don't wish to.
Initially what I was saying that was it like you don't make me sad? Is that what was the...
Yeah, you don't make me sad.
I felt like panic in my heart. And later I was like saying other things as well. Like it felt like there was like heat spreading through like the top of my body. So yeah, I don't know exactly what that means, but
yeah, it seems as though it's the panic that you would feel maybe at certain points, and you're feeling that again. But as an adult, in the context of being at a lovely festival, and you think, well, why is this coming up? I'm safe. I know I'm safe, but your body doesn't know you're safe. Your mind does. Your mind can rationalize anything. It can try to, but your body knows the deepest truth. And so when you're accessing the body, you're actually being transported back to that younger self who did feel panic possibly, or did have these sensations, and because they're too overwhelming, we push them down. But actually, as we become more open, that we're just very sensitive, and you can feel energies of other people and things like this. So yeah, I don't know what that sensation is, but I would say it's all stuff that we've forgotten about. We forget about it, and when we remember, we go, oh, this is a new thing. Like, what's this? But we realize later on, it's, oh no, I remember that feeling. I remember that I was working through a lot of stuff in my belly, and I used to tell myself that I was feeling unwell. and I didn't go to school on some days. I said, oh no, I'm feeling really unwell, but it was anxiety. It was anxiety in my belly. And when I was starting to do this work, I was having this feeling come back in my belly. I was like, have I regressed in my practice? Like, why am I feeling anxiety in my belly? Is like not nice. And I thought, oh no, like I used to feel that, and I pushed it away. I didn't like that feeling. So then I accepted it more, and it opened up. And it definitely is not all resolved, but just to open it, and when you come back to it, to open it again, it becomes less tight and contracted, and you're more open, and you don't slip into running narratives that are founded on anxiety, because I had a coping mechanism to deal with that. But if you don't have the anxiety anymore, there's no coping mechanism, so therefore the structure of the personality that is coping for that doesn't need to be there anymore.
Can you say that again?
So if you have a certain trait, like the anxiety or the fear, if that's no longer present, you don't need to keep using the coping mechanism that you've learned to use as a child to deal with it. And the personality aspect that manifests from your coping mechanism doesn't have to be there anymore. So you become, in your own experience, less personal, but actually from the outside, you appear to be more free. You actually appear to have a really strong personality to other people, but internally you don't feel as though you don't say, oh, I'm like this and I'm like that, because you're not caught on trying to cope with something. A good example for me is, as I grew up, I didn't receive a lot of love from my dad. So then I took to being successful, being academic, as a means to gain that love from my father. Because if I could prove my worth, then I would be loved, right? But once you start to heal in you the place that doesn't feel loved, then you don't feel the desire as much to be super successful, to prove your worth, and therefore the personality aspect of me being very ambitious, being a really huge, visionary, it can still be there, but I'm not caught on it as much because I've resolved the wound of being unloved. So, and we all have our own ways that we've coped, and we all cope in different ways. But the illusion is that the personality that we've formed, we believe to be who we are, but it's actually just a compensatory mechanism that goes back all the way to these feelings we had where we were in a certain circumstance and situation and we didn't know what to do. And when we learn that, it is difficult because there's a kind of an ego death process there, because you have these beliefs and these narratives, and you have to fundamentally first recognize, that's not what I am. And you spend a lot of years saying, I'm an ambitious person, I really, really like to talk to people, or I really like to cook, and all of these little things about yourself that you just think they're my quirks. You can trace everything, every single thing, back to a way that you've learned to respond to your environment. And it's very devastating for your ego, because it removes your sense of being special. You just realize you're ordinary, just like everyone else. Everyone else is in that same position.
Yeah, very well said.
Thanks.
I think, if you don't mind me sharing, I've done some inner child work before, and I find it really difficult to connect. But this felt like the barriers were kind of down a lot more, and it was so different. When I visualise myself as a child, I want to hide, I don't want to communicate. It's really difficult to kind of, come on, what are you trying to tell me here? That's really, really hard for me to access, but this was completely different. It was like, bam, I'm there. So, yeah, like really feeling that, and not feeling that separate. It was like, gosh, this is like how I was feeling. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, yeah. That's what the most important part, because if you feel as though it's separate, it's not me, it's something that I've externalized my own energy into, It's great, if the inner child feels really healed, great, what about me? So we have to realize that the inner child is what we are. It's just a program running in us. It's a belief system is all it is. And the inner child, and visualizing it, is a portal into starting to work with ourselves. I see it as a stepping stone, really. It's a good portal, but eventually you have to be being the inner child, but not even as a concept. you're just working through repressed emotion, suppressed emotion. That's the whole purpose of the inner child is for that. And I think that, you know, I wouldn't go as far to say that it ever has an end process, because healing can always be continuing. The subtleties of, you know, how you've learned to cope can always be expanding. So yeah, I don't see it as being about an end journey, just about trying to go deeper into yourself and be in greater alignment with love or truth or God or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think I align to that statement, because I started doing some inner work about 15 years ago. I've kind of dipped in and out of it. But when I reflect back to the period that I first started to wake up to some of these personality traits that I had, and they're quite strong as well, you know. I couldn't sort of speak or let myself go in without just so much crying all the time. It actually got me down because there was just so much of it. So sometimes I would actually avoid doing work because I didn't want to cope with the level of crying, because I get so absolute exhaustion, like literally couldn't go to work for a week. So I started to avoid it. And what I then had to do is I had to take it into really small amounts when I was doing it. And I think I've kind of gone a long way. But like yourself, I don't feel like I'm finished. I feel like there's still lots more I can, but I don't feel like, oh, I've got to keep working. I was like on a mission. Like when I first approached it, I felt like, right, I've got to really heal myself. I've got to get this problem. Now I feel a little bit calmer. Just like, yeah, right, just small bits. You know, just smaller bits. And the crying has stopped. So I can't say that I'm ecstatic, but I'm not doing that. So it is changing. So I don't think it can be a bad thing, because whatever your emotions are changing from, I'm kind of more comfortable with it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for choosing to share about inner child, because not many where like you can find the right guidance or how inner child like works. Or I feel more light. I feel like I've peeled off some layers out of me. I started like clenching my jaws, and I feel like, you know, like spitting out and like roaring, like a lot of things coming out. And when I started doing inner child work, people always say like, think of you as a little girl, little boy, little Diksha, and it doesn't like even like sit well. It's like, I understood it doesn't have a form or a name. It is kind of only an emotion when you think, and it made so much sense on how you tried it and then you searched for something that resonated. And yeah, I'm glad you searched for it, and thanks for sharing it. And when I started to do this, they told me there's this technique called golden thread, where you just keep asking why for every emotion. At the end, it is always the belief of I'm unloved, like you told. So I just wanted to ask a question. So at the end of all these things, this emotion is surfacing, like I'm unloved. So what do you do with it at that point?
To realize that it's ultimately a belief. That you're not unlovable. It is fundamentally the belief that we're unlovable is what makes us feel unloved. And the belief is just a belief. It's it. But we learn that belief so young from our environment and from just our conditioning that we couldn't imagine that it's not true on the deepest level. But I think as we get more open, we're more open to the idea that maybe we are lovable. You know, and it doesn't mean that, oh, I'm just so lovable and, you know, a sense of arrogance and look at me. That means everyone is lovable. If you think that only you're lovable, then you're in delusion. You can only think that everyone is lovable. That's the only way, I think. Yeah.
And I think that word unlovable, I've explored that quite a lot. I think it was how we were shown that we were loved. And we can't truly measure someone else how much they love us. Like, my mum could really love me as much as Aaron's dad loved him, but the way in which they demonstrated that through their behaviour may not be accurate of actually how deeply they feel. You know? So if we can just accept that we are actually really loved by them, but they didn't show us in the way we would have liked it, maybe. You know, I actually sometimes feel very sorry for my mum because she couldn't show actually how much love she does have inside of her. She didn't have enough love for herself. So if she didn't have enough for herself, how could she be giving me what I was needing? She hasn't even got it for herself yet. So I think that the hope for this situation is when we find enough love for ourselves, we can then give more love and we can put right things that maybe we haven't got right. As we learn that, we can learn that that's actually what's happened to us. We can be forgiving and accepting of the way they demonstrated to us. You know? I don't think we're not unlovable, we are, but we believe, like you say, we believe that thought. But how true is that really? You know? We don't really know how they really felt about us. Because so much of love is demonstrated through how the behaviours are, and then they were in situations that maybe didn't allow them to be as flowing as maybe they would like to have been. And when we look back on our lives now and how their lives were, they had different hardships, didn't they? Different hardships to what we're experiencing. All our experiences are different. So I think I was quite judging of my mum. I think I was quite judging, and a lot of my healing's through letting that go, letting the judgment go and the expectation go, and just almost being grateful that she had me, really. I know it sounds really quite basic, but I really am going to that place, just like, thank you, because I wouldn't have this amazing life. I wouldn't be able to work on my development if you hadn't been brave enough to take the step you took in your journey. So I just feel like really grateful of that. So I try to show her that gratitude, and when I show her it makes her go all over the place because it's so humbling. She almost can't cope with it. She almost slightly likes the other personality traits that are a bit angrier. She kind of relates to them a bit more.
That's why we stay to them, because
You sorry?
that's why we stay in these personalities, in a level they feel comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
See. Oh, I can't wait to feel ordinary. Really miss it.
We are special and ordinary at the same time. And, you know, we're all unique. We all have a gift, and yet we're all the same. And so much of us is exactly the same. You know, it's 98% of the programming is the same, and the 2% is what makes the diversity of personalities and interests and all of that. So I try to focus on the 98%. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm aware that there could be another workshop, so
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
thank you.